folks, welcome back to Middle Earth. Here we are. We're back at the Watching Now podcast as we go full-on nerd for streaming TV with recaps, breakdowns, Easter eggs, and sometimes, we're gonna talk about spoilers. Let's just call it as it is. All over our favorite shows, and our favorite show this time is The Rings of Power, Season 2. By the way, I'm Drew Lewis. I'm your host for the show. I'm joined today by Aundawyn, who is the founder of the TTRPG show Roll D5 and our Tolkien superfan. And then Chris Mills, a longtime friend, expert foodie and nerd, but more importantly, he's our Tolkien expert, and he's going to explain everything. He's going to we're going to walk through, and I'm going to, Chris, tell me what's going on here. And he's going to be like, that's what's going on. I'll be like, okay, you blew my mind. So get ready for those moments, and let's get started with The Rings of Power, Episode 4, Eldest. Let's start with you with a non-spoiler review. I just want to get, each one of you, just give me real quick, no spoilers, just tell me what you think. What'd you think of this episode?
I cried of happiness.
Oh, that's nice.
Twice.
Twice. Well, that's
That's about as non-spoilery as I can get.
Yeah, nailed it. Any other main thoughts there, or just
no,
the joy?
I'll explain later, though.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah,
Chris, what do you think?
I enjoyed this episode a lot. I thought, we'll talk about all the things that in detail as we go on. But overall, I was there for this very Lord of the Rings moments here.
I'm with you guys. This felt the most Tolkien of the series so far. In a way, it's the best episode yet, but in the same way, it's the most TV episode I've seen. I don't know if that makes sense, and maybe I'll dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm gonna need more than that.
And I'm looking at it only from a production standpoint there. You could feel the TV-ness of it kind of seeping in, where the first 3 episodes I felt like it was more cinema. Just the storytelling of it felt more cinematic.
Yeah, I never even considered that. It's a good combination that we have with the 3 of us here to look at it from these perspectives.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump into our spoiler review. We're going to walk through scene by scene and break it all down for you guys. The opening scene, we start with Galadriel and Elrond, and Galadriel is struggling, with Elrond becoming kind of her superior, her leader here. Elrond's barking out some orders. He's like, I need some archers, I need some swordsmen. They're gonna follow us on this journey. And Galadriel is kind of being all snarky. Oh, now there's something I can do for you now. That's how this works. And he's kind of like, that's not very elvish of you.
Homie needs to check in with himself.
Yeah.
He needs to have some heart to heart with himself.
Yeah. So they kind of argue a bit. I mean, what do you guys think of this little conversation here? Were you kind of feeling this?
I thought it was sad, but at the same time, it also brought, because I've also been watching the trilogy this week to watch kind of Elrond's personality, and he does kind of feel hardened, because now we're seeing more of the tension between him and Galadriel, which we know things end up turning out okay, but most of the tension with the ring, and that's where it's based on. I don't think he's mad at Galadriel at all. It's all about the ring and what she's choosing with it. And so seeing these two just back and forth was really sad, but also it is making Elrond who he is in the age that we know him as.
I agree with that. I think you got to give latitude for what these characters are young, thousands of years, right?
3,000 at least years younger.
So that's a long time to change. I can't imagine what I would be in 1,000 years. The personality change I would have in 1,000 years later, right?
It's with the lockdown. We are different people from before lockdown versus after. We are not the same.
Totally, yeah. So I'm fine. I don't have a problem with it not lining up exactly 1-to-1 with their movie versions of the characters. I think that's okay. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's interesting how passionate Galadriel is over how robotic in a way Elrond kind of is responding to the situation. It's almost like Kirk and Spock, You know, like you got
Yeah.
like the Kirk and Spock dynamic here.
It'll be interesting to see because he'll eventually get a ring. So
Hmm.
that's going to be a really
Yeah,
cool, like, character swaying.
That'll show him.
Yeah.
yeah. Anytime that he's talking to Galadriel about not using the ring, that's always on my mind. Is how we know that he's headed that way.
Yeah.
So the two journey to Egrion, and Gladriel and Elrond walk up to a bridge that has been decimated, and it comes.
Lightning.
Yeah, that it looks like he's like, lightning did this, and Gladriel's like, nah, I think something a little bit more powerful than lightning took out this mega bridge. And Gladriel gets a vision from her ring, like, as once they ask, like, which path. It's very Lord of the Rings, like, must choose which path to take. The northern path, which would extend our journey by 2 weeks, or that is probably safe, maybe not, or the southern path, which will get us there quicker, but it goes through probably an area that may be a trap. Elrond kind of sticks to his guns and says, "We're going the southern path, baby. I don't care what your ring says." What'd you guys think?
I love this scene. I thought that just it looked very beautiful, and the thing I was really wondering about though is where are they? Like what is this bridge and who made it? Because
Yeah,
any structure like that's on that scale typically in Eriador would have been made by the Numenorians, um, which they haven't had a chance to do yet. So that must leave the elves then. So okay, so this is an elf bridge, and then given its proximity to where they're going, so they're coming from Mithlond, or they're coming from Linden actually, and then going to what we know as the Barrow Downs, then it's probably the Brandywine River, but it's not the Brandywine Bridge.
this is like a cavern.
Yeah.
That's another thing too. Is it's like it's a huge drop. It's
Yeah.
in the landscape. I can't think of where that might be,
Yeah,
but that's with a lot of things with the show. You kind of I take the show for what it is and how it's presented, but I can't resist trying to figure out
right.
where are they on the map here.
On the
Where
map,
are-
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, and that's interesting too. This is the first time in the show where they kind of did a fast travel moment where we're going on a journey, and it kind of shows the map, and it kind of does the
Um,
little dotted line thing, almost Indiana Jones style, kind of.
but
That
there
was
were
showing
a
the
lot of
direction they're
sweeping
going.
shots too
those
Yeah.
were.
of
Oh,
that were reminiscent of the trilogy, and
Yeah.
you get to see the really pretty scenery.
Hmm.
yeah. That made me really happy.
And I think this is a slight problem I have with right now. Like the first season, everyone felt like I'm going to wherever, and then the next scene, I'm here.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
and now
yeah.
it's like we're going to this planet. Oh, it's like a 10-day journey. Oh, okay, we're gonna watch that
Yeah.
10-day journey.
This one
You-
even started that way. I almost said it in our last episode when we were talking about how we thought that they were playing a game on their horses to
Yeah.
try to steal the rings,
Yeah,
and I'm thinking, when did those horses start running at that speed? Because I hope not all the
for
way
5
back at
Oh
days.
my
Regan.
gosh.
Yeah,
for 5 days straight or whatever it would take it to.
yeah.
Yeah, those elven horses, man.
It was just a normal journey, and then
Stamina.
at the very end, Galadriel's like, "Bet you can't catch me."
Yeah,
JK, LOL.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So this is and this is also an interesting scene. We get to see a few more. We are introduced to a few more elves. We don't quite get all their names, but
Speaking of, I actually have their names.
oh, nice.
Shout out to Wizard Way Chris, who just works their butt off getting all of these things. So I'm probably going to mispronounce these because I'm not a Tolkien language specialist, but Chris is. So the first one we have is Camnir, which means handman. And then we have Vorohilde, which is ever follower in Quenya. And then we have Rian, which is crown gift in Sindarian. And then we have Daemor, which is dread knight or darkness or shadow knight in Sindarin or Noldorian. And then we have Tirn Gorthad, which in Sindarian is the name for the Barrow Downs. So we've got that that we had talked about. But those are the elves that we have, and so I thought that was really nice to be able to give these side characters their own names.
They have names.
That was really nice.
All I could think of when you were rattling off like their cool, like the meanings of their names is like, I need an elven show that takes place in like a department store where like the elven name is like Stalker of Shelves or like checkout guy.
That would be so funny.
You know, it's like, what's your name? Yes.
Handman is probably the
Handman's
funniest.
Totally, that's where it came
name
from.
to give
Handman.
someone.
Yes. As my father before me, he was a handman. Yeah.
There's so many jokes that could be.
The other thing I think of note of the bridge was Galadriel's quick to point out that this was probably the work of Sauron. And that she kind of repeats that several times throughout this episode, and we'll kind of point that out. She's pretty much on the like anything bad. That's Sauron. Yeah, that's probably Sauron.
Yeah.
Which begs, like we talked about this in the last episode. Sauron, they didn't show it, but he did a lot of work between going from his meeting with Adar to Celebrimbor, right? Like there was a lot. Like it kind of in the show, he like left Adar and he shows up at Celebrimbor's gates and was like, "Hey, buddy," but like there's some shit that went down clearly.
Yeah, I was thinking of that watching this because you were asking how, like, who actually killed the elf messengers and how is Sauron getting all of his news, and this does show that he has servants if he needs them.
Yeah,
apparently,
or planted them at the very least, as we'll find out. So off they go to the south, where they where Galadriel's kind of like, I warned you, and the only reason I'm going is to save your asses. She kind of leaves it on that note.
Yeah.
And Elrond's like, oh shit. And then we jump to Rune, where the stranger is kind of like woken up, and he's like, where are my friends? And he's looking around, and he runs into another stranger. And he asks, have you seen two halflings? And he's like, no, but you found a goat. Which was probably might be the best line ever. I'm not sure. I chuckled quite a bit at that. And then the stranger's star map flies away, and he goes chasing after it like this was like, it felt like comedy. Like I was watching like a Charlie Chaplin film or something. Like my thing with my star map, and it gets stuck on a tree, and he's like, I guess he looks at it as like serendipitously, well, this must be my staff.
That was so funny.
Starts yanking on this tree branch like it's gonna just fall off for him or whatever. He doesn't even do like a karate chop or something to get it off. And then the tree says like, the tree just swallows his ass.
I was thinking of the Dark Wizard and wondering, like, he's clearly arrived in Middle Earth first, or before the stranger.
You know?
But I wonder how much longer has he been there, because he's doing a lot better.
Yeah, a lot better.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the stranger's kind of like, I was like,
he only just got a good command of the language at one episode ago or something.
Yeah. I feel bad for this dude.
The poor guy. And like this introduction to Tom Bombadil is more perfect than I could have asked for, because not only is he singing a song directly from the books, it's how we get his introduction in The Lord of the Rings, which of course we know he's not in there. There's a lot of good reasons that it's unable to fit into the trilogy, just because of Tom Bombadil's nature. But that's how you get an introduction to Tom in the trilogy, is I believe it's Pippin. Of course it's Pippin who gets enveloped by an Ent tree, and Tom has to come and be like, all right, let him out. Everything's fine. You'll be okay. And like coax him out of the tree. And so that was a really lovely introduction. It was just, chef's kiss.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing the first on-screen adaptation of Bombadil. Every other Lord of the Rings adaptation, even the BBC radio dramas, which was 13 hours, omits the whole Bombadil thing.
Really?
He doesn't fundamentally change the course of the story. So if you're going to cut, I can understand why we do that. But I like Tom Bombadil as a character. Um, I like that he is so musical. He's almost like an embodiment of nature in song. He's
Mm.
always singing, and in the book, literally always singing. Like even when he's not, even when it's not a song, everything that he says is in this little his
Sing
rhythm
songy.
that he says.
Mm.
Well, it's really interesting because if you think about how Tom Bombadil got into the story in the first place, if you read the History of Middle Earth series, there's in Return of the Shadow, you can see Tolkien sort of sketching out ideas about what's going to happen as he is at this point just approaching Lord of the Rings like a sequel to The Hobbit. And in The Hobbit, every chapter they have sort of a little mini adventure on their way
Yeah.
to the big story. They meet some new type of creature or something happens, and they have.
Mhm.
So he wanted something like that to happen to the hobbits in Lord of the Rings, and he was just putting out ideas. And he thought one idea he had was that they were going to run into a witch's hut, which would have been interesting. It's interesting to imagine what would the Tolkien witch's hut have been. But he
Right.
already
Yeah.
had this character. Tom Bombadil was a character in a poem that he wrote that was published in Oxford Magazine, I think, in the 1934, I think. And it basically is this verse that sounds a lot like Tom's singing. It's that kind of rhyme and meter, and he goes through this series of events where he meets people, and they all try to catch him in some way, and none of them are able to hold him. He
Hmm.
sings a little song and gets free. So,
Yeah.
and in this poem, you have introduced Goldberry, who is his wife, the River Daughter. You have the Barrow-wights. You have, oddly enough, you have badgers that try
Yeah.
to. That's I think that's the only thing that didn't end up getting into Lord of the Rings. But he basically imports the Tom Bombadil, and all the cast of characters, and says, "I've already got these as ideas, and I like them, so let's
Hmm.
have them have an adventure there."
Oh,
And I
okay.
think that in the same way that he did that when writing Lord of the Rings, this show is sort of doing that with the TV show. This is something that exists already in in the original, not the adaptation, but in the original, that hasn't been in another adaptation. And so they pull it into the show in the same way that Tolkien sort of used it. So that was
Tom
nice.
is such like a weird like enigma because Tolkien doesn't really explain who he is, really what he is. He's immune to the One Ring. Like, it was funny because they would talk like, well, why don't we have Tom take it to Mordor because Bombadil just isn't affected by it. And I think it's Gandalf who's like, he would simply forget that he had it. That is not a good idea.
Yeah.
He'll leave it somewhere and he won't remember. Like, he's so carefree that it
Yeah.
wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But let's just give a quick shout out to Rory Kinnear, who's playing Tom.
Oh my
that
gosh.
Yeah.
is probably crushing it. So I'm hoping people
Crushing
are
it.
happy with this portrayal. I think we all here are.
Yeah, I
Yes.
haven't seen many people on at least my,
Yeah.
searches and, my FYP and stuff. People love him so far. They adore him.
Yeah.
Good and better.
It'll be interesting. I hope we get more, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But we cut away before we get more explanation. We cut away to Nori and Poppy. They're in a predicament here. They're kind of like waking up. Where are we? They're lost, and they were lost before, so they're lost yet again. They're more lost, maybe. I don't know. I would hate to be them. Be like, we didn't know where we were before, and now we don't know where we are now, and we're down a man. Well, I guess that's how that's going. They see the riders. They jump off a cliff and roll for forever. Such a strange moment.
Yeah.
And they land right in front of another halfling who introduces himself as "I'm nobody," which I guess that's a name
Poor guy.
you could take. He gets. They figure out that he was stealing water. I guess from where, who knows? And they
not that well with the bell on it, I hope.
Yeah. Well, is it Nori or which one? One of them they have
Poppy.
or Poppy. They kind of have a little like love sparkle
That was
connection.
cute.
It's Poppy. Yeah, there's a little
Yeah.
Goo Goo eyes happening between those two. Yeah. Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah. They somehow like convince, and by convince I mean blackmail him to take them to their village by saying, "We'll turn you in for stealing water unless you take us." So he's clearly not the brightest, the sharpest stick in the on the ground here. So he says, "Okay, I'm going to take you to the Grund, but there's a few rules you must follow." And he lists. Do you guys? I mean, is there anything to add before I get any further here to this moment, this
I
silly
love that he
moment?
forgets, like here's rules 1, 2, and 4. Me and my husband looked at each other. We're like, was that 4?
Was it
And
4
then
or
Nora's
3?
like, was that 4? And I was like,
Yeah,
okay, that's
yeah.
good. I'm glad I didn't like miss that.
They're brought to the secret village, and they are introduced to the Grund. So their enclave is called the Grund, and we get an interesting sweeping shot of all the halflings. Like it looks like they've dug holes out of rock. They kind of look like they're living in like little rock caves.
Hobbit
And
holes, you would
yeah,
say.
bum. Yes, I love it. They this is where I felt the most from a production standpoint. This episode, this is the moment in the episode where I'm like, okay, they're on TV budget. Like there's a restriction here. This little Hobbit area just felt like I'm on stage 4 soundstage in wherever in LA or in
I could
London,
see that.
and they built like this tiny little Hobbit, and there's like fruit and random bushels here. Like it just like they
Yeah.
didn't know what to do here. They're like, we need to make like these people live in caves. Like okay,
I think it was when the guy was like chopping some vegetables because it was kind of that same moment. I was like, because this was just a weird cut to where he's like he cuts something and then he goes to put the like scissors whatever down, but he stays there and doesn't move. And I'm like, oh, they gave him direction just to when you're done, but the
you're done.
camera continues to sweep, and the guy should have just like
Yeah,
did a little bit more movement because he just
right.
freezes there.
Yeah. Yeah, you can almost see the moment where they're like action, and everybody starts doing
Yeah.
their like actions and walking. Like it
Yeah.
just felt like I was like, okay,
Yeah. It's a very cool concept, but yeah, it's hard to make it look cozy in a desert.
yeah. So they meet the leader, Gundabel, played by Tanya Moody, who comes out just barking. Right? She's
Oh
like,
yeah.
"What are you doing here?" And Nori's like not having any of it. She's like throwing the sass back,
Oh
which
yeah.
doesn't go well for her because that was the fourth.
This is
That
the
was the
fourth
fourth
rule.
rule.
The missing rule.
The missing,
Yeah.
the missing rule that nobody who we find out his actual name is Merrimack, by the way.
That one seems a little strange, but that's okay because these aren't hobbits that we're really used to.
Right.
I mean,
These are
none of them are. They're all hobbits in this ancestral kind of form. It's a
Mm-hmm.
little different.
Yeah, because there's what 3 races of
Yeah,
like
there are 3 original
half
clans. Yeah, the Harfoots, the Falahides, and the Stores.
Okay.
Speaking of which, did you guys when you were watching, did you know that they were Stores before they said they were Stores?
No,
No.
but when they said stores,
Yeah.
I was like, wait, Smeagol is a store.
Yes. And
Oh,
that's
right.
what
Yes.
clued me into it as we were watching, and I said, I bet they're Stores because the leader was a woman. So, and it reminded me of Smeagol's stories about his grandmother and Gandalf researching and finding the Smeagol story and saying that I have no doubt that she was a matriarch of her people. And I thought,
Wow.
well, that reminds me of this. So the others are probably Stores. So
Oh,
that's a
that's-
cool little connection to
That is
to the
cool.
lore.
That's a good one.
I never. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Well, Nori, obviously, she throws some sass, but then she also like says like, "Hey, our friends, who are you looking for?" "Oh, our friend, he's a wizard." And that does not go well either. And they're freaked out, and she's like, "The only wizard we know around here is," she calls it out, "the Dark Wizard." So clearly everybody knows this dude's bad. And they lock him up or tie him up. So Nori and Poppy are
Honey.
not doing so good.
Can we also talk about in that same scene the yet another tease that this is not a blue wizard, that the stranger is going to be Gandalf. He says he's a giant, a big elf, like a big grand elf or something of that nature. A grand elf. And I'm like, oh man, come on.
That's what I'm like. Come on, please.
There's
direction. Come on.
No, I've given up already. I
just
kind
of
catch that. Later.
See, the thing is,
I did not catch that though.
There's no good way forward for me now, because either he's Gandalf and I'm going to be irritated that they've danced around it so much without just getting to the point and saying, this is who he is, or he's not, and then I'll be irritated that they,
teased that he was.
Yeah.
So why have them saying, was it a grand elf?
Because it just sounds like Gandalf.
It sounds like Gandalf.
I feel like that's like I feel like you're reading into that. Like, to me,
if it was that one thing, if it was that alone, I would agree with you and I wouldn't say that. But it's in the whole entirety of the series, with all of the things all put together in that context, it is absolutely a tease that this is Gandalf.
Okay. Because I'm not seeing that, but I'll trust you guys.
Yeah, when we get back to Tom, I've got some ideas and a question about that too, because I'm still not convinced.
The Tom scenes, for me, there was a couple nods, I thought, that were pretty glaring even to me. And we'll get to that. So we mention of the Dark Wizard. We get to see a little bit more of the Dark Wizard. We cut to him plotting and talking to one of his Rider Goldface guys. By the way, those costumes they're really cool. I kind of want to see them at Halloween. Like, if somebody's gonna make some badass like metal gold face cosplay costumes, like look at these guys. They're right. Those
start now with those hammers.
3D printed. You can make it look like metal.
That shit.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So the guy's pretty confident. He's like, I will find them or I'll die, kind of vibe. And the wizard's kind of impressed, but also a little bit like, you're either an idiot or you're really, really brave. And he says, okay, you focus on the halflings. I'm going to focus on the Ishtar. And he kind of leaves it at that. So it's kind of like, there's a little bit of, this guy's got a little bit of like, what do you call it? Like evil villain, like, if you idiots can't do it, I'll do it. I kind of felt like this was like a trope. Like I'm watching
He might as well be tying Nori to the train tracks and twirling his mustache.
Totally.
Twirling his eyebrows.
Yeah. And it kind of leaves it at that. And by the way, this guy looks like Sauron, right?
He does.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It's no accident.
No.
They're doing
that would be
this.
So weird.
It would be
if
really
it was.
Weird. Yeah.
I'm just going to be a little irritated either way.
Yeah. No, I know.
I'll be mad that they made him look so much like Saruman if he's not.
Yeah. I know. So then we're back to Bombadil and the stranger. He rescues him from the tree, kind of goes and pats the tree and says, like, hey, let my buddy out. He whispers some sweet nothings. It's really nice, actually. And the tree he kind of like shoves him out of his armpit. Like, in the scene, it was kind of funny. There was a little bit of I guess camera trickery there. I think it was nicely done. Also, the tree felt, when you see it curl back, it actually felt practical. It looked like it was. It looked like it was like a real tree that could, like, they built that could move or turn. It was kind of cool. Like, it didn't look CG.
They could totally do that.
Workshops
can easily do something like that, so I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away by that. It looked really nice.
Not exactly the same way, but this scene is kind of happened before in the extended editions.
Yeah.
Except it was the Merry and Pippin get swallowed up into a tree, and then Treebeard comes and says pretty much exactly the same thing. It's because the Bombadil lines were given to Treebeard for the extended edition for the movies. And we were watching this, and Paige, my wife, was saying, so imagine if you'd never read the books and you just seen the movies and you're watching this, it might be really confusing. Like, why are they doing this again? Exactly the same lines.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, but I wonder how many people have seen the extended edition that aren't like super... how many people are willing to sit through 4.5 hours of more Lord of the Rings, or other than the three of us?
Release the extended edition.
Yeah,
Give more, please.
Give me Faramir's wedding. Like, come on.
Yes, Houses of Healing, Faramir, that whole.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh
More of
man,
that story.
you know it's coming. We just need to start the hashtag. You know how Snyder had the
Don
Snyder
Marshall
Cut.
has been trying to get it done for like 2 years now. He's trying his best.
So Bombadil invites him in his home, the stranger in his home, and the stranger is like taking a nice bath, and he hears Bombadil singing, and then he hears a woman like chime in like mysteriously, and
Yeah.
he actually calls Bombadil out on it, and Bombadil's like, "There's no one else here but you and me.
Just us.
Help me out here, guys," because I clearly heard it.
Yeah.
I need help myself.
Okay.
You absolutely hear her.
Yeah.
And there's even a point where they're both singing. You hear
Right.
both their voices singing at the same
At the
time.
same
So
time,
it's
right.
you can't just say that. Oh well, he's just really good at doing
Yeah.
some woman voice or whatever. And then he comes back and he lies about it. And why? I can't figure out why is he being that way.
I don't know, because like not only in the subtitles does it say Goldberry, but in the credits there's Goldberry, so it's very obviously Goldberry. But I don't.
And who's
I wonder-
Goldberry for everybody that doesn't that wouldn't know?
Goldberry is his wife.
Right. Okay.
And also probably the daughter of a river.
Yeah. Yeah,
The
that's not
daughter
confusing at all to anybody
of
who's
a river.
unsure.
She's
But
as
it's true.
Yeah, she's as mysterious as he is, and
Okay.
they're both tied in with nature, and so she can. I think she's taken from like the ideas of like nature sprite in folklore tradition, things like that.
Okay.
But yeah, the Withywindle, which Bombadil mentions, is actually the name of the river that flows through the old forest, and
Oh wow.
I guess that's her mother.
Tom took it literally. I think her voice maybe can somehow just kind of like transcend in a way. And so when he asks, I clearly heard somebody else here, and he's like, there's literally no one else here. Like, quite literally, there's no one else here besides us. So
That's a good idea, because and that might even go back to be consistent with the lore with her being the daughter of the river, because in the books she is it's September and the lilies are almost all gone, and Tom has gone out to gather some before they all die, and whenever they first see Goldberry, she's sitting in the living room or inside of his house or just the main room, and has all of these earthenware bowls that are filled full of water with water lilies floating in them. And even as a kid reading Lord of the Rings, I kind of got the sense that she maybe needs that, like she needs to be in that kind of environment, and maybe can't be on this journey because she needs to stay in the place where she belongs, close to the river.
Yeah, almost like being able to communicate through her other senses of being, which is water.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he wanders for a good several thousand years just to see what things are like.
Yeah, and you get a sense of that. The wizard keeps prodding here, and he's like, "Who are you? What are you?" Going back to your line, like, "Who are you?" I'm Tom Bombadil. What are you? Let me clarify. So he kind of gets a little bit more specific. He keeps poking, and Tom gets he starts to really lay it out a bit for us as an audience and for the wizard. There's some moments where he says, "I was here before the stars when it was just a black sky, and then all these eyes were looking down upon me." He starts to hint at his age, in that sense. He does something where I think he coughs or sneezes, and the fire kind of reacts to him. He turns the star map into a loaf of bread.
That was so funny.
On a knife. And then the wizard's just blown away. He's like, teach me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. Or maybe he's Yoda. I'm not quite sure who you want to compare him to in Star Wars lore. But and Tom is sort of like hesitant. He's like, hey, there was another wizard that came through here and wanted to learn from me, and he went to the dark side, as they say.
He started a cult.
Yeah, he started a cult, and as wizards do, I guess.
As one of the blue wizards did, was start cults.
Yeah.
But before we move forward, we need to talk about the lamb that he has, because he talks a little bit about, I'm basically the eldest being that's the eldest, that's basically ever been, and that's what we know as well. He has named the lamb Aundawyn, which in Elvish is kind of rendered as like oldest or eldest. So he named the lamb after himself. It was
Yeah.
so Bombadil of him to do that.
Yeah, that's cool. It's that's what I was going to say about the lamb, was that its name was Iarwain. That, which is a word that we hear in Lord of the Rings, in the Council of Elrond, when they're talking about Tom, and Elrond tells that the elves' name for him is Iarwain Ben Adar, which means eldest and fatherless. Which you might recognize the word there, Adar, in as the same name as the character, as the father of the race of orcs.
Oh, okay.
Introduced, yeah.
All right.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about that at the end.
Are we thinking that this goat has been around since Tom's been around? Like he's like his buddy
That
following
would be
him around?
so funny.
I think they're
Like he's
just
got a little
normal
goat friend?
animals.
Yeah,
but
they just-
Yeah.
he's just having fun naming them after different names of himself.
So we don't know, like we just know, like from a lore standpoint. So Tom's been around since the beginning of Middle Earth, but he's not quite like a being like Sauron or a wizard. Like we don't really, like he's clearly been there bro longer than anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is he a god of sorts? I mean,
What a good question.
This, well, it apparently is a good question, because internet nerds have been talking about this question for a very long time. And, well, I say internet nerds, but like even Tolkien himself was asked this question. And in one of his letters, kind of curtly says, I don't really think that Tom is benefited much by overanalyzing what he is or whatnot. He's an enigma intentionally.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
for all that, if you want to still try to go down that road and say, well, given what we know, what is he? If he's that old and he's also in the world, he must be one of the Ainur. So he must have participated in the music of the Ainur in some way, and then chosen to go down into the world when Iluvatar gave it being.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way he would be there that long ago. But does it mean he's one of the Valar? Well, that itself implies is that he's not God. So like the one God, Eru Iluvatar, it's not that.
Not him.
Which a lot of people argue that he is. But I think that's more because of the Judeo-Christian tradition of the he is is called I am, and Gulberry says something to that extent, like this, when Frodo says, who is he, or what is he? And she says, he is. And but I think that's not at all what Tolkien was thinking. So clearly some order of being like Sauron, Gandalf, that kind of thing, whose spirit forms existed since the beginning of the universe.
Exactly.
But it's interesting that even like Morgoth and like all that stuff happened, and he just sort of he's like non-confrontational. Like he doesn't inject in himself into sort of worldly politics, I guess, as a whole. Like he sort of stays agnostic.
He's just the master of his own domain.
Yeah.
Yeah, which makes him so fun. And also at the same time, useless is the wrong word, but like you said earlier, it doesn't make a big impact on the story, because like he is incredibly powerful, but chooses just to do his own thing. And I love that, like, freedom that gives the character. It is so fun.
But from a contradictory point, here he is, though, not coaching, but he even alludes that says that, listen, if we don't stop, or if we don't come together, or if parties, and he kind of winks almost at the stranger, don't do what they need to do and stop the Dark Wizard with joining Sauron, like bad things will happen, kind of is sort of like, so he's sort of helping here in a way, I guess. And there's an implication there where he said he even helped the other wizard. So clearly his implications have, like, he's still kind of, but he doesn't really want to get involved personally, which kind of feels like a bit hypocritical from my POV. Like I'm looking at it a little like, all right, buddy, you're giving me like Luke Skywalker from The Last Jedi vibes.
I
Yeah.
can
It's
see
kind of
that.
it's rubbing me the wrong way, my friend.
He kind of does that in the like in Lord of the Rings too, where he's like he speaks in almost like those riddles where other people kind of get frustrated, like just tell me what I should do or where I should go, but he doesn't. And I can see why he was more direct in the TV show, because I think that type of character and the way he'd speak would seriously irritate casual viewers who don't know him very well at all. So it's interesting that they did make him more direct in that regard.
Yeah.
It serves to move it along a little
Yeah,
better.
it does.
All right, let's keep it moving.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we get down to because we could talk about Bombadil and the Stranger for a whole episode.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll see more, Tom. We get to the Barrow Downs, and it is in fact it's a trap. Cue Akbar.
We have enemy ships in Sector 47. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
Totally. Gladriel Vision reveals the dangers, and lo and behold, they show up, and the elves are like, I like how they walk. They're already in it, and they're like, you know what? This place doesn't look so friendly.
Yeah.
It's even the trees aren't still. And right away, an elf bites the dust by the chains.
This is what I want to talk about real quick.
Yeah, jump into it.
So, but they said, I'm frustrated by a certain horror trope that the Rings of Power followed in episode 4. It might seem minor for most, but like, really? Everyone signed off on naming the black elf Daemor and then had the black guy dies first trope. Like, Camnir, the hand guy, couldn't be the first one to kick it.
Yes.
And I
literally said that. Of course, the black elf was the one that died. Yes, I totally thought you might as well put a.
Catch that.
I totally did say the same thing.
Oh
No
my
way.
gosh, the internet is like
Fucking hilarious.
like, and naming him Daemor, like,
Yeah, I don't get that though. What's the thing about naming him? Which would it would be
his
Daimor,
name
right?
yeah, I'm kind of going with Daemor just because it's probably Daemor, or like
How's it spelled?
It's
D-A-E?
Daemor.
AE would have the value of I, so it would be Daimor, which literally you can't die anymore, I suppose. Yeah.
Yep, which has of like the definition of Dread Knight, darkness, or Shadow Knight, or in Sindar, well, sorry, not in Sindar, the pronunciation. But yeah.
So his name is another indication of his blackness. And,
yeah. They signed up on that and had him die first. That's why I didn't bring it up until now, because
they had to have done it on purpose. You don't think so?
Horrible. If
they did, it's horrible.
Oh, why?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of funny. I don't know.
It's hilarious. At the same time, it's also
I think it's like, at this point, it's a joke, right? Like, you kind of like, it has to be, right? I don't know. It
has to be, because that's,
I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, maybe if they had him in a red shirt too, then I would think,
exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, at some point you have to give a trope,
red-shirted.
and then just,
Because I agree, it's like, why not the hand guy? Why can't he have died
why not
first?
the hand guy?
Come on.
Handman.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's what I wanted to point out. It's just hilariously frustrating.
I guess the black guy bites it first, and they all draw their weapons, and turns out, I guess it was strange, like, they could have. It felt like they all could have just got chained up real quick and died right away, but instead the Barrow-wights kind of revealed themselves.
Yeah,
and it's pretty cool. This CGI, this looks really.
I love the look of the Barrow-wights.
Really
it seems
cool.
True to how they're described in the books with the glowing eyes.
Yeah,
I
really like this.
It's really creepy. Just overall, and I think we're speaking of horror tropes, but notwithstanding. Yeah, I like the way that this series has handled these moments of horror.
Me too,
and this one included. And,
yeah, it looked really cool, and even when they like would swipe their swords and the way they would kind of like disintegrate, but then kind of rebuild, felt very cool. Like there was a lot of thought. Whoever's handling the VFX management or like the art direction here, like props, you guys are doing good work. This like it doesn't, it's not necessarily new, but it feels fresh. You know what I'm saying? Like it still feels right. And it feels right for the world of Lord of the Rings too. Like it doesn't
Without
So
it feeling like, oh, that looks similar to this other fantastical
right.
thing. It did. It really felt like its own thing.
Yeah, yeah. So they're hacking away at these guys, and they're not going down. It kind of doesn't look good. Even Gladriel gets caught by the chains, and Elrond saves her before she gets taken in. And Elrond saves the day here. He says, "Come with me," and he opens up a tomb and pulls out a weapon of a buried weapon, and starts taking out the Barrow-wights, which he reveals after he kills a few that the only thing that can kill them is their own weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, this scene. I mean, I read a little bit of something that this doesn't quite happen here. Is that the case? Like, this isn't something that happens at this time. It happens like later.
This I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Barrow-wights. The graves would be there.
Right.
They are very ancient, but the Barrow-wights shouldn't be here at this
right.
point.
At this point in time. Right.
Yeah. They are a third age thing. They. But yeah. The in the early first age, like the ancestors of the Aundawyn, when they were first moving into what used to be the western part of the world, that's all under the ocean now, they buried some of their dead here. And then later, when the Númenóreans arrive here, they know about this, and they revere the place, and they make settlements here. And it's not until still before the events of Lord of the Rings, but definitely in the Third Age, there's basically to short version. You've heard of Arnor, which is like the Gondor of the North, the Kingdom of the North. It breaks into three for a dispute I'm searching for my words here. There's a king dies, and it's not clear who the heir should be, and there's a argument between three brothers over who all they want it to be them, and the Witch King, who is the leader of the Nazgul, sees this division as an opportunity to maybe wipe out the Dunedain forever, and sets up a kingdom in Angmar, and there's wars, and as part of that sends evil spirits into the graves, so that anybody that tries to settle that area again would be warded off by their power.
Oh,
wow!
So, brief history with me.
I need to look into that more because
that's cool. That's very cool. But we get the sense, and it's a little heavily implied again. Galadriel kind of drops it like this is the work of Sauron. Once again, he basically laid a trap. He kind of knew people were figuring it out that he's with Celebrimbor, and he was like, they're going to come this way. I'll take out the bridge, force them to the south, and lay the trap. And they also discover their fallen comrades with the note from
with the message. Yeah,
the message.
That answered our question that we had.
Now we know who did that.
Yeah. So, but we quickly go back to the refugees at
Pelargir.
Pelargir, thank you. Or Isildur, Arondir, and Estrid are searching for Theo. They have like a search party looking for Theo. There's a lot of Arondir is the only one who kind of like notices like it looks like petals. I think he's finding petals right on the ground, and then he actually stumbles across like a torch, like
that was so cool.
Out of the ground. I don't know how it stayed lit, but it's like a hand holding a torch, like
so
buried into the ground, and he comes across, and there's like a bunch of people just been smashed into the mud. Pretty awesome scene. By the way, pretty visual. I don't know how that torch stayed lit so long, but Arondir kind of calls out Estrid here, back at Pelargir, and she kind of comes forward and reveals that she's.
Arondir is, oh my gosh, like the immediate like sussing it out.
Oh yeah,
is spectacular. He is currently my number one like favorite character in this show. Besides, like of course, like Tom, like of course it's gonna be a favorite, but
yeah,
Arondir is phenomenal.
Yeah, and he calls her out. You're a wild man. You're one of the wild men, or I guess in this case, a wild woman. I don't know. Do they not? Everybody's a wild man, even if you're a woman.
One is a Tolkien.
The Tolkien thing.
Tolkien thing.
Men means humans.
Yeah. And what I love about this is like 10 seconds later, Isildur is like giving his like, "Hey, girl."
Yeah.
Like, are we gonna do this or what? And then
he's just trying to riz her up for sure. Yeah,
for sure, man. It's like, it's pretty like, wow. And she's like, now he's like, oh wow. And he's like, I'm betrayed. Like, my love, my heart.
That poor guy. He's trying so hard.
He's working it.
Shot his shot.
He's playing the long game too. He was, you know. So they, I don't know why the rest of the party. I guess it's sort of revealed that she wants to send everybody to. Is it the south?
The north.
The north, and he's kind of like, no, that's a trap. But I'm going to send everybody else there anyway, and the three of us are going to go.
Sure, yeah, guys, you go that direction.
Yeah.
We're going to go this way.
Yeah, so and just the three of them go on their own little adventure back to the south, which I was kind of like, okay, what happened to the rest of your search party?
Following the pedals.
Yeah. Splitting up is always a good idea.
It's always a good idea.
Come on, split the party.
Yeah, so they follow the pedals. He's following the pedals through this trench of mud, like that the Ents have made, that we know the Ents have made.
Spoiler.
Isildur gets stuck in what we think is like a mud pit, like quicksand. It looked, we kind of all like everybody. I mean, it stopped me if you thought this was something else, but I'm like, it's like here we are. It's he's stuck in the quicksand, and there's going to be overly sized rats soon to show up.
I didn't think that. I thought the never-ending story.
Oh shit!
Oh, Artax.
Completely traumatized. Where I'm like,
God, that is so sad.
I'm just glad his horse wasn't there.
I was all Princess Bride that's where we differ. I don't know. Well, it turns out Rondir tries to save him, and he gets pulled into the mud, and we all think Estrid's gonna like, all right, that was fun, guys, and go run back to the Wildman.
So funny.
And it kind of looks like she is, but then she turns around and she brings back a stick, and we think she's putting the stick in, and we think. Like you're thinking like an elf, Arondir is going to find a way and pull everybody out, right? But instead, this giant like snake-like monster bursts out of the thing and almost takes her out. But Arondir cuts his way through the gut of the nameless dark entity or wizard or lizard, and they come spilling out.
Yeah, nameless things are really cool because I think it's also what the almost like Kraken octopus type thing was in the original trilogy. I think that's also a nameless thing. They're just some of these creatures that are just so ancient and just dark and hidden away that nobody ever sees them. So when you do, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, I love this stuff. This is like the fantasy part of this show or Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit that like these like little moments of like what like even in like to your point in Lord of the Rings when the what was it, I forget the name of it, they actually named the monster,
the
Watcher, right? I was like, I'm here for this. Like these kind of things is what makes me feel like I'm watching a fantasy show, I'm watching a Lord of the Rings show, Rings of Power,
and Arondir's just supper.
Yeah,
I was laughing so hard.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What do you guys think? So the only thing that irked me about this scene was Estrid does this selfless act to save them, but they didn't see that, right? Like they don't know that she tried to save them because the stick was
true,
right? So part of me is like, oh, we as an audience see that she's got a good side. Right, that she's willing to kind of like save these people, but those two don't know. But yet later on, and we'll get to that, there's a moment where they feel like, oh, she's redeemed herself. So I was a little bit like irked here from a character's POV. They wouldn't have quite warmed up to her, I feel like, or felt this change of heart, I guess, a little later on when we get to it.
I didn't even think about that.
So they're all by a campfire, and Arondir leaves the key on a branch and kind of signaling and walks away. And you're kind of like, I don't know where he's going to take a piss, maybe. And Isildur sort of says, like, I guess it's up to me to like let you out. And he decides to let Estrid out, and is like, listen, we can have our thing. And they're getting all romantical again. He's doing his thing, right? He's putting his moves back on.
Trying.
And Estrid pulls the sword out of his like, come on, buddy, this guy. Isildur's not the sharpest tack. I tell you, like
He's not.
he's kind of an idiot. I'm not gonna lie. She just yanks the sword out of his sheath like there's nothing stopping that, and pulls it on him. And the Ents kind of see this as like an act of an
Aundawyn
attack.
was waiting for it too.
Yeah, Rondir's like, I'll take you down. And the Ents show up, smack Estrid across the way into a rock. She's knocked out, and they start almost taking out everyone else in the party. But Rondir does makes a plea. But before he makes a plea, the Ents ask him, have you ever cut down a tree, or have you ever chopped wood?
Oh, that was so heartbreaking.
And he goes, yeah. This, come on, if this doesn't remind you of Ghostbusters, like, come on. If someone asks if you're a god, you say yes.
Yes.
Ray, when someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
Okay?
It's
I mean,
like,
if a giant tree comes to life and asks
not
you
gonna-
cut trees, you go,
No.
right?
Never.
I mean,
Not once.
gonna lie.
never cut a tree in my life, buddy. I promise. I mean, come on. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
this felt so like, really?
I did think of a story from the Silmarillion where it talks about how Ents first came into being, and it was sort of a response to dwarves when Aule first created the dwarves, and then God basically said, like, okay, yes, I'll allow it. Yeah, that's fine. But his wife Yvonne wanted to have protectors of the forest, and he allowed that too. And she basically comes to him and says, "Hi, you made your axe-bearing dwarves, and they're going to go chop down the forest. Well, I've got forest protectors now too." And he just kind of says, "No, they're still going to need wood." And that's the story I thought of, because like it by him not denying it and saying yes, it reminded me of well, there is this conflict that never really goes away between these two kind of people.
Arondir kind of like he kind of like he dodges a few blows and then is like, listen, I promise. He kind of makes a promise. He's like, I promise to protect this forest, and they kind of tell their story of, we've been around, our seeds planted this forest, we've been around for, they kind of tell a little bit of a history of where they come from.
That was when I started crying. That was the second time.
Yeah, and it's pretty heartbreaking, and in this case though, you guys were right. This is an Ent wife, but also an Ent.
And
right?
Also an Ent, yeah.
Yeah, so which
I of course knew their voices sounded familiar, so I immediately had to go and pause and look it up real quick.
Yeah.
So Snaggleroot, who's the Ent, is voiced by Jim Broadbent, incredibly famous. And Winterbloom, the Ent wife, is Olivia Williams.
Yeah.
So some very wonderful powerhouses of voice. And I
recognize hers, but not his, because I love her in Rushmore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was my favorite of the season so far, is with Arondir and Snaggleroot and Winterbloom sitting there together, talking and going over kind of like the history, the hurt, the pain, and then near the end is just kind of like that hope where she gives him a little flower as kind of like a promise to keep. And that's what he says later to Theo, is like, I kept a promise and now I have another one to keep.
Yeah.
And that is so important because we don't know much about, especially the Ent wives or anything like that. And so that gives him a whole new purpose, which connects him very much so with the audience, because like watching those two walk away holding branches, I fucking lost it. It was so sweet and so wholesome, and was just it was all around just absolutely beautiful. Well done.
It was a nice moment. I kind of just want to know which one of those Ents killed that guy with an axe.
I do too. Like,
they even showed it in the last time on. You see that guy get waxed by an axe, and you know it was an Ent.
And they picked up the axe, like, they left their stuff. It's like, okay, but who used the axe?
Oh, it was an Ent. One of those Ents knows how to wield
an axe. Do that.
I'm telling you.
You tried to chop me down. It was probably Winterbloom.
Dude, he threw that axe John Wick style at that dude. He went flying. That was like Gimli. That was like a Gimli throw. It was badass. Yeah, you mentioned so the Ents let go the prisoners, even the Wildmen, and it turns out here and and Isildur's back at Estrid's side, like, "Hey, I got you, girl. You okay?" And he's like, "Let's do makeout time. We're safe now." He's like leaning in for the kiss, and Estrid's betrothed, Hagen. I can't remember.
The way that Isildur, he just like stands up and walks away.
Yeah, he's like, I mean, this guy
It was just
is like
tragic. I felt so bad.
He just
for him.
melts.
He
Yeah.
just wants to love and be loved.
He just was no. This feels more like I just needed. I've been away from.
I've been out to sea.
I've been out to sea. I've been almost killed by spiders. I lost my horse. I need some comfort.
The horse
you know?
is fine,
That's-
which was great because especially after last episode, we were like, oh, did he just like take the horse back and get everybody? And he did.
Yeah.
Took priority and took the horse back first.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Honestly, surprised. I guess in my head I was thinking that the fiance didn't really exist.
Yeah.
I didn't think so either.
I thought that was a ploy.
I thought it was more like I have a boyfriend. Not really, but that's the only way you'll leave me alone.
Exactly.
Sort of moment.
I was actually surprised too. I didn't think that was going to be a real thing. But I wonder like where they're going to take this. So at the end of this scene, this is the end of this story for this episode. But Arondir, like you said, and Theo kind of have their moment, and Theo's like, I got to go do my thing, and Arondir's like, I got to go do my thing, and I made a promise, and so this feels like, and obviously I hope they're going to make the decision, and we continue to follow Arondir and not Theo.
We better.
So this seems like the end of Theo's story for us, right?
For now, at least.
Yeah,
He'll probably come back at some point randomly because I'm still convinced he's going to be
Nazgul.
Nazgul.
Yeah.
So
Ringwraith.
And I'm actually interested on where this now love triangle between Estrid, Hagen, and Isildur, like if that continues, or if Estrid now has her man, and they're now out of the story, and we're just gonna follow Isildur and Arondir.
Maybe
as they
it's
go find
not
orcs.
not a triangle.
So Tolkien, when he writes women, he does it very well. There is one thing that he does not do well, and that is give them names.
This is true.
And which is kind of reminds me of like the Rohirrim story that's coming out in December.
Yes.
The daughter was never named.
Doesn't have a name, so yeah.
But now they've named her Hera. But
good.
Isildur's wife is unnamed in the books. So Estrid could be who he marries. I don't think so. But it's quite possible because she's unnamed and just could be about anybody at this point who's romantically linked to Isildur.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I guess we'll.
So it's still possible, yeah.
Yeah, it's still possible. Well, I mean, we'll see if she's in.
I'm getting the sense are we kind of rooting for this? When you're watching this, you kind of.
I am, but at the same time, I'm like, should I be?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's weird.
I like. We've barely seen any of Estrid, and I like her backstory, and I like that she's. If you're to take that she accepted the mark of Adar as to survive because she has no other choice, and then that's why she took it, burned it off, and then the rest of her people are doing that too, and then it turns out there's more of a misunderstanding, and then they become more friendly with the if not the Númenóreans per se, at least the Dunii, the ones of the faithful. Mm-hmm. There's potential there, and I'm intrigued by that, and sure, yeah, I'm kind of rooting for Isildur to
hook up, get some finally after all his work,
right? Yeah. And after actually last, I think it was the second episode. I think it was either the second or the third when she stabs him in the leg. I want to shout out the writers, the producers, the directors, everybody who had a say in Isildur saying you're not supposed to pull it out. You're supposed to leave it in.
Yeah.
That is one of the only pieces of media that has ever done that because it's accurate. If you are stabbed, you do not pull it out.
Well, unless you're about to be stitched up.
Yeah,
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah,
Then you-
but like
then
Let a healer
that
do.
made
Yeah,
me
a
so
professional. Yeah,
happy
yeah.
to
Yeah.
see that piece of media like debunked and made accurate.
Well, let's go back to the Harfoots, and we're going to talk a little bit. We get a little bit on the legend of Sousa. So Poppy name drops her leader, the Harfoots leader, Sadak Barrows, and to Gundabel. Is it? Man, I'm gonna
The
Gundabel.
Goond.
Gundabel.
I can't.
Gundabel. Dagoon, telling her the story of a promised land for halflings called Sousa. And so she takes her to this wall, and it kind of tells this beautiful story of like one day we'll be taken. All our kind will find a land of rivers and of flows, and we'll all be happy and like this utopia,
Yeah.
right? And Poppy kind of has to break the news and say like,
Oh, it
yeah,
was Nori.
no. Oh, it was Nori. Nori kind of breaks the news and is like, yeah, we're wanderers. We don't have a home. So both their sides are sort of, and this to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I got the sense that this is sort of like their utopia is going to be
The Shire.
the Shire, right? Like they eventually will find
Well,
the
yeah,
Shire, right?
yeah.
Like the Sousa is the Shire at the
I
end.
mean,
It
it
is-
looked like the big
it
tree
is the Shire.
as
okay.
well.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if there was like something else here that I'm missing, but I was kind of like, okay,
Well,
Shire.
we know it's the Shire.
Okay.
You nailed it.
Because Sousa is the Westron word for the Shire.
Oh, is it
Well,
really?
You know that. I don't know that.
I did not realize that.
Well, now we all know that. But what I'm saying
Now we
is,
all know it.
you can stop speculating. That's
Okay,
what it
yeah.
means. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I even also just felt it was obvious, but I love that. I love the language that they just throw in like that. It just, so good. Man.
Yeah. Then the evil riders show up again, from that were sent from the evil wizard, and they just walk up and just smack the shit out of the goon leader,
And then try to
And
bring
then
her back up.
and then help her back up.
That's
Yeah.
where all of the so now like we talked about how like it kind of looked like an onstage production. Now we know where all the money went, and that was to make them like the
Look-
height and sizes accurate. That's where the money went. For
Yeah.
those shots.
But she doesn't give up Poppy and Nori, and they basically say, well, the wizard knows, and he'll be back, and he'll huff and puff and blow your hobbit hole down. It's kind of the vibe I got. I was like, okay, and they just leave, and so we'll see what comes out of that. That's the end of that story for this episode. You guys have anything you want to add there?
I don't think so.
No. So the final little piece of this episode, and it's probably one of the most badass scenes I've seen in a long fucking time.
Oh, yeah.
Elrond and Gladriel are having a little moment here by a lake. They're talking about the ring and the choices that we're making, and Elrond's like, basically, I don't trust the ring, and she's kind of like, yeah, but you can trust me in a way. And she's like, no matter what happens, Sauron is our priority. And if the choice comes between me or killing Sauron, choose Sauron. It's kind of, and Elrond's like, okay, I will. And I kind of thought they were having a moment here. And I get you guys are brothers and sisters, but there feels like more of a, I don't know. It felt more heartfelt. And there was a moment where he kind of like puts his hand on her face. I don't know. I was getting a little love sparkle vibe. There was a connection here.
All.
Really? I don't know. I was kind of.
I think that
It's a deep care that they have.
maybe this is a modern thing, and honestly, maybe it's kind of a man thing too, that we associate
Physical
closeness
touch.
and touching
Yeah.
like that with a romantic relationship, when actually it's not necessarily.
Yeah. Sure. 100%. I'm not convinced it's the thing, but I could see why others may think that. I don't know.
Okay,
And-
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like I think they may imply it, and going back to my reasoning here is like I think the writers want a love arc of some sort, like a love dynamic, right?
I think that'd be weird.
and I think they're going to try to find that, and I think. And I don't know if the common person knows enough about Gladriel and Elrond to disassociate and throw that out the window.
Well, we
right?
need Celeborn to come in because that's who she marries.
Oh, really? Okay.
Who is absolutely around at this time,
Yeah.
but
Just
just
haven't seen him.
not here. Yeah.
Okay.
I did want to
And-
point out something
Spoiler.
too. So I also love like with the trilogy's been like, did you know? And one of the things that you kind of brought up with like the like more physical affection reminded me of a quote from the Fellowship and something that happened in like the making of. And it's after Frodo was stabbed and he's woken up in Rivendell. And I don't remember who said it, but it was Ian McKellen. So somebody had said that, they had tried to make it more affectionate, this particular thing.
Oh, this is Sean Astin telling this story.
Yeah, it was Sean Astin. I think he said
Yeah.
he wanted to make it more gay. And which we didn't say it in like a joking way. He was saying it in such a sincere way because Ian McKellen helped guide the scene to where originally it was just Sam going in and kind of like touching his shoulder and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're okay. But he's like, no, what you need to do, grab his hand, lovingly caress, because this is the quote from the book, is at that moment there was a knock on the door and Sam came in. He ran to Frodo and took his hand awkwardly and shyly. He stroked it gently and then he blushed and turned away hastily. And I thought that was also really important to whether like people believe that, Frodo and Sam had actual feelings for each other. It's very heavily implied throughout the media that, there was something between them. Whether it is or not, the importance of that type of affection, I think, is very important because it's one of the reasons why Aragorn is such a topic of non-toxic masculinity. He shows and expresses in words and in physical affection love between him and everyone in the Fellowship that he has come close with. And I think that they brought that here because that was the vibe that I got. There's always at least some point during one of the episodes where I'm like, this feels like the trilogy. And I felt that here.
The trilogy was full of that too.
It really was. It was full of it. And I feel like they brought that here, bringing that type of non-toxic affection between people. And it was
I
wonderful.
think you articulated that way better than I did when a few moments ago when I tried. But that's where I'm going with this. And you're right. I felt the same thing watching the original trilogy whenever it was in the cinema originally. And at that time, I'd never even heard the term toxic masculinity or read any type of feminist thought or anything like that. But since, I think that's what's making me tie that all together. Is it's absolutely this portrayal of something that maybe we've lost in our culture. That
Wow, that's great. I love that. So an orc, just to keep things moving, an orc is taking a random shot at a horse, I think, that's running through the forest. They're trying to take out a horse, and like the 1 in a million shot an orc takes, like an orc would never be so lucky to hit anybody with an arrow ever.
I know, right?
But hits an elf right in the gut with a stray arrow.
I'm gonna say it's the Handman. That's just what I'm gonna.
The Handman goes down. The Handman goes down, and it's not looking good. And Galadriel, unknowingly or seemingly unknowingly, heals him using the power of the ring, which I didn't know that was
new to me.
A power that the ring had.
No, I mean, trying to think about this. They certainly heal while they're in Lorien, but not because of any kind of direct action that Galadriel takes. And it's not even that kind of healing either. It's more of like a spiritual or emotional healing. If anything, the healer is Elrond.
Right.
And whenever his healing is described, it's really more in association with him being the eldest of the Númenórean line.
Well, that's why they bring Frodo to
Aragorn says, I can't remember how much of this is in the movie. He has Sam go look for the Athelas plant and whatnot, but this is it's made a much more of a big deal in the books that the hands of the king are the hands of a healer, and it's because the Númenóreans are have this elf blood and this elf healing, and their arts, and they know how to use this plant, and it's not just something that just anybody can use to the same effect. And Aragorn makes the comment that Elrond is the, I guess, current living eldest of my house, because his brother started the line of kings in Numenor, and he heals Frodo after he's been stabbed. But I never associated any of that with like the power of their rings. That they're more to preserve knowledge and culture. And
but either way, it felt very magical, right? This isn't like the arrow literally disintegrates almost out. Like they don't even pull the arrow out; it just
no. She just force ganks it out with the ring pop.
It's very like I force healed you. You know, like I know I'm making a lot of Star Wars references this week,
but it's like that. You're right. It is like that. Yeah.
Here's my problem with this, with things like this. When you can do that now, every time someone gets injured, and if there's a ring within like a horse ride's distance,
they just do that? Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Now we're always going to be asking, why isn't, why can't you do like now they have to come up with rules when it works, when it doesn't. So I'm a little like kind of on that moment.
It makes
from a story perspective.
Well, it just occurred to me that the series has made a big deal of talking about with the whole thing with the tree withering and dying, and how the mithril saves that, and that was the whole point in the first place, is to make these rings to save the elves.
Yeah.
Within the context of the show, I suppose, if you didn't know anything other than what they've just shown you, that you could say, okay, well, this is the healing power of the rings.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that.
feel you
I
there.
didn't even think about that.
So Gladriel's like, she takes the ring off, hands it to Elrond, kind of implies like, keep it safe, keep it hidden, keep it safe,
keep it secret.
Keep it secret. And she just is like, I'll buy as much time as I can, and runs off on her horse and proceeds to just beat the shit out of.
Oh my gosh, that was so elvish.
Like takes out like fire arrows, jumps over, like leans back and dodges a sword blow. Like I'm 15 guys get axed. I don't even know. Like I lost count.
So good.
And then she looks like she's gonna get away. Like it looks like she's gonna take out, and she has time to stop, have a conversation. Like, hey, you guys don't belong here. Like she's that confident where she's like, I could get away, but I'm going to kind of lecture you guys real quick. Right. Like, and I'm like, okay, this feels right. I feel right. This is an very elf thing to do. Right. Like, and she's about to take off again. And she gets taken down, I guess, by a chain or something. Something knocks her off her horse. And it come to find out it's Adar. And he snuffs out her flame arrow and is like, hello there.
This
and that's where we end scene.
Cool, because so I know kind of like the surface of this. So Chris, you may be able to bring in some more details, but Adar is speaking Quenya.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm not going to try and say it.
Ellen sila luminum in Tielva.
Yes, a star shines on the hour of our meeting. And this is very important, especially to book readers, because this is the greeting that Frodo gives Gilazor.
Yes.
When he meets him, one of the elves that helps kind of guide them to Rivendell. And that was phenomenal choice of words.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I definitely, when he says that, I mean, I know exactly. Like, oh, okay, this is.
I'm missing something. Why is this important? I get that it's a reference, but I don't.
There's some interesting things as to like, who the hell is Adar? He's speaking Quenya, which is interesting. It's a particular Elvish, like dialect tone, something like that.
It's an older version. It's
well, he's
the analogy is like it's elf Latin, basically. Yeah. It's not normally spoken anymore, except in Valinor. But that was the language. There.
Adar's older than Elrond and Galadriel, right? I mean, he was around at the beginning of the Second Age when Sauron was giving that speech.
But it's also like, how old is he at that point too?
Right. I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting he's speaking that. And
hasn't aged a day.
But yeah, this greeting, it was known as an elf greeting. I saw it. There's
Okay.
in a documentary that I watched where Tolkien himself. It's one of the film clips we have of him, and he's writing it in the Feanorian characters, and he's describing it. So
Incredible.
It's significant.
Is it
Just for that? Well, let's just think about what An was saying. And the scene in the book when the hobbits meet Gildor.
Right.
This is right after the first scare with the Black Rider, and what makes the Black Rider scurry off is the elves come along singing, and then they all talk about it. And Frodo says, Ellen, he says that he greets him that way. And then Gildor's reaction is he says, speak no secrets, friends. Here is a scholar in the old tongue. Bilbo was a good master. And it's kind of this moment that tells you that I'm an elf friend.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe what we're supposed to be reading here is we think of him as like the father of orcs, but it's reminding you that this is coming from the idea that the orcs were created by Morgoth as corruptions of elves, and one of those elves, maybe the first one, was Adar.
Yeah.
And he's greeting Galadriel
as
in that way.
Almost like a villain would say, like greet like their one of their greatest foes, like welcome, like a Bond villain, like being overly welcome to Bond when he walks into their lair.
Which is why
one thing I do want to note is I don't know if you guys caught it, but the song over the end credits of Old Time Bombadil was sung by Rufus Wainwright.
I didn't see that in the credits, but I'd love the song. But Rufus Wainwright.
It was really catchy. I was like,
it really
shit,
was.
That's an earworm. I kind of want to go listen to that a few times on Spotify. That was pretty good. I was kind of like at the end there. I was like, I hope there's another verse to this because it kind of ends, and I was like, I hope there's more there. But that I guess
a little more ring-a-ding-dillo in it.
Yeah, I guess if like what I'm loving about this series, just to wrap this up, what I'm loving about this series are moments like that, and where they're like to get Rufus Wainwright to sing an end song of Old Time Bombadil at the end of episode 4 of a series, right? This could have been like an end credit movie song, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like they're really trying to level up this show. This feels very prestige TV. This feels like, okay, we're putting out all the stops. We're gonna make you happy, fans. And listen, no matter if they might fail here and there or do some weird things with like ring powers and narratively like move things around, like I get the sense that they're trying really hard, right, to make us happy, right? Yeah, exactly. They listened, and I'm kind of here for that, and I appreciate that kind of hard work being put in for the show. No Numenor, no Khazad-dûm this week, but let's hope next week we get we go back and
I have a feeling we will. They've been doing really well in breaking up the episodes and like making us wonder as well when they come up next. One of my favorite things in shows is when they do so well with a certain storyline that when the other one comes up, you're like, oh yeah, and then you become so invested in that one that you forget about the other one, and like back and forth. And that's what they've been doing here. It's kind of like, oh yeah, that's right, Khazad-dûm.
This show definitely does
my favorite because you're so invested in what's currently happening.
Yeah.
And that's impressive.
It's good. I mean, I like that the show doesn't feel like it has a main character, right? You know what I'm saying? The first season, I think, leaned too heavily on Galadriel as like, we got a female lead and we're going to like lean into that. And I was like, oh, okay. Right. Like, I don't, but like the more season 2 went on, I felt like there are several main characters, you started really like, and I think the audience responded to that, especially with Elrond and Durin, that relation, like those moments. I think we all were like that we want more of that. And so I think season 2, they're leaning into this more ensemble view of the show. Right. And I think that's a smart decision as well. All right, guys. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thank you guys, everybody, for joining us to recap episode 4 of The Rings of Power. We'll be back next week for episode 5. Hopefully, we'll we'll give you as much deep dive as you listen today, and more so. Could have some special guests we're working on. Stay tuned for that. But thanks for listening and watching if you're over there. But if you want to leave a comment or leave a rating on a podcast, do that, because what that does is it helps people like you find us, and that's kind of what we want. We want people to listen to this and really dig in on it and really learn more about Tolkien and the rich history and be happy about the fandom, as we all are, and what's going on right now with this great show. And don't forget to also check out CouchSoup.com for all the latest awesome things, unfiltered and authentic look at pop culture, where we recap shows like this, like you're listening to right now, as well as like daily articles on video games, movies, TV shows, anime, you name it. We're talking about it over there, and we have a vibrant community. If you want to join that community, please do so. That support helps us make shows like this and supports the writers and the creators like us to continue to make shows like this. So please do that. Go and support. We love you. We love you. Love you. And that'll do it. Till next week. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Am.
Thanks, Drew.